out his left arm to ensure the ball doesn't pass the umpire, and thereby speed towards the boundary, as indeed he would have done had he not prevented it doing so, because it was hit off the meat of the bat.
Yes, nice stroke, and Compton here will no doubt want to hammer home his point. All summer he's played so well and really knocked on the England selectors' door in a sense earlier in the summer. There were a few articles about that, and he'll be keen to play well against the South Africans in particular, being of that background himself originally, of course.
Steyn bowls the next delivery from the river end, and it's flicked beautifully off the toes by Alex Barrow, who's coming back for a third run. He's not himself batted with any great sense of achievement throughout the summer to date, so at least as far as Barrow is concerned, we have an opportunity for he personally to attempt to make some inroads into developing his career and to stamping his authority on this game, at least to an extent, and also to give himself some kind of security within the Somerset setup as a whole. We have 4 slips, a point, square leg, long leg, mid-on, mid-off. No one back at cover or extra cover. Oh, there is a man back at the deep point boundary who's almost invisible in the background of the white Andrew Cattanach pavilion and the seats that adorn the front area there next to the steward as Steyn resumes from the river end, bowls, and Compton simply allows the ball to go outside the off-stump. It's taken by A.B. de Villiers, and there's no run. So we've got 3 slips at gully, point, deep point, mid-off, mid-on, square leg, long leg. That's Vernon Philander, who looks as though he's yet to recover from an extended tea break. I did have the privilege of seeing him at Pizza Hut last night with some of the boys, who seemed relatively upbeat in spite of the tragedy that's befallen Mark Boucher, who was struck yesterday by a bail, and the ball that preceded the bail in the eye, almost to a sort of Paul Downton scenario, Mark II. Stays next delivery, is fully in length, and it's driven as far as to sober at mid-on, and there's no run. I believe, Ben, it is the bail in the eye that was then followed by the ball that seemed to
sort of knocking it further in, which is well, it's horrific. It really is. With Downton, it was bad enough because it was a bail, I believe, and I don't think the ball sort of followed it. As far as I know, he stands a 30. I think he'll get 30% sight in that left eye. When the sight does, in terms of for the rest of his life. So we'll see there's no way that he can play ever again. So it really is a tragedy.
Steyn again resumes from the river end. It's short and it's hooked in front of square and it's hooked well. But the man at square leg, Ashwell Prince, long boundary on this side, of course. Very short boundary on the Andrew Cattanach Pavilion side, long boundary on the Pegasus Apartment side of the ground, but it results in little more than a single. Compton off the mark, so unlike Errol Sapire, he will avoid the indignity of actually having scored a pair, which was unfortunate because both batsmen run out in the first innings, one as a result of a terrible mix-up between Alex Barrow and Errol Sapire, where the ball barely went beyond 15 or 20 yards. 2 runs were attempted and it all seemed to fall apart, and then Nick Compton was run up by a direct hit. And Somerset recovered splendidly from 32 for 4 to 312 for 8 declared, with Peter Trigo batting truly magnificently as the next delivery from Steyn is fully in length and played watchfully forward, exaggerated defensive stroke from Alex Barrow, and there is no run scored at the end of the second over.
It was quite a curious session of play before the few drops of rain did come down, and there was a minor break in players. And Wabo Totsobi is laughing there on the outfield with Vernon Philander, just having some fun there together. But yes, it was a curious session because it was something like 2 runs in 6 overs, and it was pretty painful watching in a sense because you felt both batsmen were struggling, though the bowling wasn't particularly anything to write home about either. So it was a bit of a nondescript passage of play, but I'm sure as the session we've watched so far is certainly taking it a step up already, a bit more intensity to proceedings.
As Tchowick bowls the first delivery of the third over, and it's wide outside the off-stump, taken by de Villiers way down by his right ankle. The ball's not coming through at all, very slow track. Did we not have a similar session of play yesterday when Leach was batting and Somerset mustered about 10 runs in about 40 minutes? A session of play which really achieved absolutely nothing, when a declaration might have been forthcoming and the chance for the Somerset bowlers to have a go. Hussain and the Overtons, who both acquitted themselves beautifully again. And that was a bit of a shambles, and in a sense, the next delivery is played in defence, and it's a quick single by Compton, who gets there in the end. The ball strikes him as he endeavours to evade its path.
Well, yeah, I think
he struck quite painfully, actually, on the back of the right thigh.
I think Tahir might be thanking Compton for that, because that might have just evaded Tahir. It's thrown with some effort by the fielder, but it was a little bit wide and might have evaded
4 overthrows and 5 runs.
Well, exactly, yeah. So Imran might thank Compton a little bit there, but yes, let's hope Compton doesn't hurt himself. He looks all right now, though.
He does. And one of the other anomalies of this match, Ben, I'm sure you'll agree, is that we've had a 2-day fixture for a 2-innings game, which is quite extraordinary, given that Kent are coming next in the South African agenda, and they have 3 days for their agenda. Yeah. Next delivery is short. It's hooked, and it's hooked imperiously in front of square, and it's 4 runs. That's the finest shot that Alex Barrow has played on this ground for quite some time. And that's an imperious strike. It seemed to permeate both the man who's now appeared in the forward square leg position and the man at backward square leg on the boundary, so it seems to have pierced them with symmetrical precision. So he advances his score to 13. The score is 15 for 1 in this, the 8th over. But it did strike one, does it not, Ben, that the authorities have chosen to use 2 days only for a 2-innings game, which, of course, having been wrecked by the weather that it has proved very futile, as the next delivery is outside the off stump and there's no run. Well,
it's almost like an exhibition match in a sense. I mean, when Peter Trigo did a very exaggerated appeal this morning, which made everybody laugh, there was sort of echoes of that, but not really. It's it is being taken seriously, but like you say, it doesn't really have an opportunity to result in anything. So it's one of those catch-22 games where really it's more of use to South Africa than us in terms of getting a good workout, and they've had probably a better workout than the West Indies managed to get back in May.
As the Somerset next delivery is played in defence by Barrow, and there is no run scored. Yes, that's a very good point. I mean, the game is 16 aside, and whilst it's all well and good to have practice matches, and one can understand it given that the South Africans have had no time and will have had no time to genuinely prepare for the first Test match, even if the Boucher incident had not occurred. But one always believes that according to the laws of the game of cricket, that it is essentially a game played between 11 players on each side. But these days it seems that the laws of the game are of no consequence whatsoever, because you can just rip them up and do what you like. Next delivery is full in length. It's outside the off stump, and it goes through to De Villiers, and there's no run.
Well, yes, I mean, that's controversial as always, Julian, definitely. But no, I agree. I think it's been a good attendance. That's been the wonderful thing about these last 2 days. We've had a really good turnout here at Taunton, arguably one of the finest, if not the finest, county ground in the country. And the Colin Atkinson Pavilion always looks lovely. A good turnout here. It's been a success from a turnstiles point of view. One was a little bit worried that they might call the game off early, so I'm pleased that we're sat here talking about cricket and that it hasn't been called off early, because even though there can't be a result, it's still great to see these international cricketers at Taunton. And I was sad when Callis didn't come out to bat this morning, because he retired early, mainly because he was consoling Mark Boucher, I believe, who's one of his close friends, of course. And it must have left a terrible cloud over the whole team, really. But who knows? They may play even better now because they want to do it for him. Anyway, that's now played away. The delivery there from Steyn off of his legs by I think that was Compton, and they take a quick. Did they take a single there? Or was that?
They did
indeed. Yes, I thought so. We have a different wicket we're looking at to the usual one. It's somewhat to the right of our usual position here. As my colleague was saying, it's quite near one of the boundaries. So the leg side field, as it is at present, you'd need to be a very powerful individual to get a 6 over in that direction, because it's virtually the length of the ground. But we've got Dale Steyn hustling in now, reaching the umpire and bowls, and that's played forward really nicely. Bat and pad close together. Nice textbook style there. Good technique. The weather at the moment isn't too bad. Sight visibility is good, and hopefully the rain clouds will stay away. We've got a nice crowd here, and they'll be hoping to see some entertainment, probably pretty much most likely from Compton, though they might hope that Peter Trigo gets a second go because he played so well in the first innings. as Dalstein comes in again and reaches the umpire, and that's played nicely forward again. And Steyn fields off his own bowling, not bowling to his full strength, you don't feel. He's kind of bowling a little bit within himself, perhaps pacing himself for duties in the Test match, which is about 10 days away, isn't it? Not
9 days, Ben.
9 days.
Interestingly enough, I mean, you rightly mentioned Peter Trego's Herculean efforts in the first innings, and indeed those of James Hildreth, it must be said.
Yeah.
He's in the richest vein of form at present and batting magnificently well. But the fact is that, given that this is a game of no consequence now, it does give Alex Barrow a rare opportunity to prove that he is worthy of a place in the mainstream Somerset setup.
Indeed, as Steyn bowls again, and that's on middle and off and played back again to Steyn, who kind of misfields off his own bowling there and throws it, or it kind of ricochets off to cover, who fields it nicely and slings it across. I think that's Vernon Philander, is that? I think possibly at cover. It's a bit of a long way off from here. My binoculars are not quite as I would like. I think it's
Ashwell Prince.
It is Ashwell Prince, right. And he fields, so no run again there. So we've got a kind of quite deep square leg, lone figure out there on the leg side, as that's short, and it's pulled away, and it's pulled hard down to that man I was just talking about, who dives across and picks it up, that man being Imran Tahir. And they take a couple of runs to some applause there. And the score now goes on to 16 for 1. Barrow on 13 and Nick Compton on 3, not out.
That was a very authoritative shot by Alex Barrow. Perhaps one feels it's a case of almost giving a sucker an even break. He just needs this chance to put some of his critics to bed forever and a day. And this is an opportunity where he can score some significant runs today.
Absolutely, as Steyn comes in again and bowls, and that's outside the off stump, and he lets that go by, and there's no run, and that's the end of the over as de Villiers runs in there. Seems so odd not seeing Mark Boucher out there, such a recognisable figure. It's always the same when a cricketer retires, particularly if it's a tragic retirement as is this one, but it's always strange when you think I shall never see that cricketer again on the field. It's a sort of hollow feeling, and he certainly leaves one of those feelings with one, because he was a cracking cricketer.
He was one of the finest wicketkeeper in the world. He's broken every record statistically. A fine batsman. And the irony is, this was to have been his swan song tour in any event.
Yes.
But that fact notwithstanding, every time I've seen Boucher keep wicket in recent years, he's always worn dark glasses, or whatever glasses they wear these days. And had he been doing so, then maybe the whole thing would have been different.
As Compton waits, and that's outside the off stump again. There's no run. That sort of glides across him, and he leaves that alone. And de Villiers keeps it and has a little chat there with Smith at first slip, Callis at second slip with those dark glasses, and also got a gully, so it's just the two slips now. Totsobe is at cover. There's a point, quite a short mid-wicket and mid-on, and a chap on the boundary, a kind of deep square leg, as Compton bat raised now and waits, and that beats him outside the off stump. That was a good delivery, seaming away from him.
I think there's some words being exchanged as well. Look,
Vernon Philander has a chat there with the batsman, and they probably got to know each other a little bit from playing together at Somerset earlier this season. And Philander knows this wicket well, no doubt, from that experience. And just gave him a little few words there, which is interesting. There were some very humorous words between Trigo and Amla this morning, which were rather charming to watch. It was rather like those Sunday League games where you get a bit of fun and byplay between players, as that one's played back by Compton, back down the wicket, and that's fielded by Vernon Philander off his own bowling, and there's no run.
Yes, it's important, even in a dead game, Ben, is it not, to ensure that there has to be not just an air of professionalism between the sides, but this is one of the few opportunities that the South Africans will have to genuinely loosen up and flex their muscles for the 3 Test matches to come. And I think, like most of us, they themselves will agree that the nature of the two sides, where they are on the pecking order of the league table, as it were, should merit a 5 Test match series.
As Philander bowls outside the off stump, and there's no run again. And that's really having nothing to do with that delivery, just leaves it alone. good sighter as the light gets a little bit darker as I speak. But yes, absolutely. I mean, I felt my heart went out to the West Indians, really, coming from such a hot country, and it was so cold here when they arrived, and they had less practice than this, but they competed better than a lot of people thought. Certainly the Australian one-day matches have been surprisingly one-sided. You almost feel the Windies might have competed better. But certainly the South African team, you would say, would, on paper, as that's outside the off-stump again and left alone by Compton. We've had 3 action replays really there. The same thing, ball after ball there, just leaving it outside the off-stump, having nothing to do with it as Compton comes down and just does a bit of gardening. Yes, the irony is that some have suggested that in terms of one-day cricket at this point in time, given the way the West Indies are hammering the New Zealanders, there are those who argued, and perhaps cogently, that the West Indies would also give the Australians some serious strife at this precise point in time, given the anemic way in which they performed against England in the one-day series. Yeah, we'll come back to that in a second as Vernon Philander bustles in again, and that's again outside the off-stump, and that's dropped by de Villiers, but quickly rectified by running backwards on himself and picking the ball up, throwing it across to his captain, who has his hands in his pockets. And walks across. Was that? Oh no, that was actually Callis, who walks across, hands in pockets now with that wide-brimmed sun hat. Not that it's greatly needed, though we did have some nice sun earlier on. The sun blessed us this morning. It was surprisingly nice earlier on, actually. Not what one expected at 9 o'clock this morning when it was raining in Taunton.
Well, in actual fact, it looked at one stage as though play at any stage was going to be unlikely. But when the sun did come out, it was jolly hot. Although one has to say that, tragic though it may seem, an indication perhaps of the prevailing conditions in the last few weeks is there's not a single deck chair to our left here. We usually have these marvellous deck chairs where people can sort of sit in semi-horizontal positions, and not one deck chair in evidence. So that's a tragedy for those of you who are lovers of lying in a sort of semi-horizontal position and drinking something nice in the hot sunshine. And maybe it's prophetic of where the weather conditions seem to have dominated in a negative way, as they have done, particularly in the West Country and up north,
well,
for many weeks.
If only we could get a roof over a cricket ground, or even look at the possibilities of indoor cricket. I mean, I know that there was some matches done, friendly matches at the Millennium Stadium once. I think it was. I'm trying to think. You correct me if I'm wrong, but I wonder why cricket hasn't looked at having indoor cricket. Simply because our weather is just so awful. One wonders if it might be something worth looking at. Anyway, Imran Tahir is ready again, and that's flighted and played nicely out on the offside for a quick single there by Alex Barrow.
Yes, it's a very good point. It is ironic. I know Melbourne in Australia is one of the wetter cities, but they have the Telstra Dome, which Steve Ward tested out. They asked him to strike a ball to see if he could hit the roof, and he was unable to do so. But you know, the climate is such that we're going to need to address the issue of climate change in this country.
Imran Tahir again, and that's on middle and off and played out by Compton to point, and there's no run. Just the one slip, incidentally. That's the recognisable figure of Callis as ever.
Because the problem is, if we're going to see a wipeout of May, June, July and August, clubs will simply go bankrupt because there'll be no cricket.
Yes, yeah. As Tahir again on middle and leg, but played out on up to short mid-wicket. Yes, I mean, this is where, of course, they look at 2020 as the great cash cow and the great saviour, but the thing is, if the weather's just ruining it, then not even that can save the turnstiles, as that's played down again by Compton, nicely bat and pad closely together, and there's no run.
The only option, Ben, I think, is to maximise any hot weather that becomes characteristic of the end of March or the end of September, beginning of October. 4 hours a day we could manage.
In he comes again, and that's beats him outside the off stump. That fizzed off the leg stump nicely there. Got Barrow going. Compton going back there, and that beat him. That was a good ball. That was. There's a chap at short leg, Hashim Amla, who waits there expectantly with his sun hat tucked into the back of his trouser leg as he trousers as he is played forward nicely. Compton played that well down in front of him, and there's no run again, and that's the end of the over. So it was interesting first over. Nothing extraordinary there as the umpire gives him back his sweater, and that's the end of the over. Alex Wharf, of course, who played back in 2004, I remember, for England in the one-day series, Champions Trophy, I think it was. Then Wabba Sotsobe.
Yes, we've got Sotsobe coming back on. The the South Africans, you said to me off air earlier on, Ben, I think it's very true, one could have regarded the Mark Boucher incident as being a potentially fatal omen for things to come, but in actual fact, your, I think, correct perspective was to say, well, look, now he's had to return home, it may just inspire the South Africans to do it, as it were, for him. Come the Test series starting in 9 days' time. So, and of course, a lot will depend upon the weather. The conditions throughout the summer against all comers has and perhaps will continue to favour England because of the seeming swinging conditions that seem to be so evident because of the rain we have had this year.
Well, it's difficult. It could go either way, couldn't it, really? One doesn't know. They could react that way, or like you say, the heads might go down and it'd just be such a dampener on things that they can't...
Could go either way,
Could go either way.
That's the Sobe again, this time bowling around the wicket, over the wicket, left arm over, and he swings the ball wildly and widely outside the off stump. It's taken by de Villiers. No pace on the ball. Keeper perhaps standing a little too far back. There are still 2 slips, a gully, point, extra cover, mid-off, mid-on. Deep backward square leg. No one else that I can see from our relatively... the position here is not entirely all expansive. We can't... There's a certain portion of the ground to our right that we're struggling to see through our not terribly clean windows, which don't open. But there you go. We manage. And to Sober again, bustling in. Left arm over the wicket, and it's played in immaculate defensive mode.
Well, having been in the...
And there's no run scored.
Pardon me. Having been in the potting shed upstairs, because BBC use, I was surprised how much better this is. It's lovely, actually, in comparison.
Oh, well, yes, yes, it is. Save for the horizontal wooden struts at the back, which allow the wet winds to come through. But
up there, that you get a banging door all the time, blows open, which is extraordinary. But no, getting back to the Chris Gale, all to mention that it's a bit of a pity that West Indies have gone home, because he's a man possessed at the moment. I'm sure he would have entertained us.
As the next delivery is again outside the off stump, and it's again left alone by Alex Barrow, and it's again taken by A.B. de Villiers. Abraham de Villiers. There's a tendency among South Africans not to use their names. We have A.B. de Villiers, J.P. Duminy, who is correctly known Jean Paul. But why they choose not to be referred to by their actual Christian names is something I find something of a mystery. I suppose it's understandable if one is looking at a Sri Lankan team. There was a time when if you had 3 initials, you were considered unusual, but most of the Sri Lankans have about 8 initials preceding their surnames. As Tisobe, left arm over the wicket, and again it's angled across the right-hander, who chooses not for the first time simply to shoulder arms and allow it to go through to A.B. de Villiers, who will, of course, apart from being one of the top-class batsmen that there is in the South African side, or indeed the world game at present, he's going to have to seriously readjust his preparations for the fact that he's going to be mainstream wicketkeeper for the duration of the series.
Well, not necessarily. Apparently there is talk of sending off for another keeper. I'll come to that in a moment. I know there's some talk about that.
As Tisobe bowls the next delivery, it's on the pads, and this time it's flicked just backward of square on the leg side, off the front foot, and it's going down to Morley Morkel at deep backward square, who returns it to de Villiers. And 1 run is taken as a seagull decides to embark upon a cursory inspection of the pitch. It's circumnavigated the wicket. It's now flying off to our left to report back to the family with regards to the conditions underfoot.
Perhaps it's going off to Burnham-on-Sea, or...
Well, yes, indeed. Our good friend, as I say, no relation to Umar Gull, Mr. Seagull.
Yes, indeed.
Mr. Seagull, and as opposed to Seagrave. As the next delivery from Sober is again short, and again it's outside the off stump, and again it goes to de Villiers, and again there's no run, and the score remains at 21 for 1. We are in the 12th over, so the scoring rate is almost of a derisory nature. But I think, in the interests of individuals, Nick Compton has nothing to prove. He's had a wonderful season. Thus far, still the only man to have made 1,000 first-class runs. Barrow has, I think, in all fairness, everything to prove. So perhaps occupation of the crease is the way to go. Tisobe takes a deep breath underneath this. He runs in. Quite a formidable man, a sort of a Zulu warrior, really. As the next delivery again is outside the off stump. Again, it's short of a length. Again, Barrow refuses to have anything to do with it. And again, it's taken by de Villiers.
Apparently, the South African selectors, they're naming a replacement on Wednesday. Someone called, and forgive me if I've got the pronunciation wrong, Thami Solkile. Thami Solkile, or Solkile. Is earmarked as the successor to Boucher, and is also contracted from April the 1st, so he's a likely candidate to be called up. But the coach, Kirsten, has said that de Villiers would take the gloves for the first test at the Oval, so That's interesting to know.
Yes, I think that there was a certain inevitability regarding the fact that de Villiers is a good keeper in his own right, and I think the first test was always going to be his part of his brief, given what happened yesterday. And anyway, we have Imran Tahir of Warwickshire, of course, proceeding from the river end of the ground to bowl his first delivery of this over, and it's fractionally short of a length. It's played not entirely with a great deal of certainty by Barrow off the back foot, backward defence. We saw a lot of instances yesterday when Somerset's batsmen had ample opportunity to come down the track to some potentially quite enticing deliveries, providing, of course, they wait until the ball has been released. And this is something that Mr. Leach has yet to learn, as the next delivery is driven with more authority, but only as far as the man in his deepish mid-off position, who does the modern thing and returns it to the keeper, rather than to the bowler, who's very close by to his right. No run results. And the score remains at 21 for 1, as the sky looks a little darker now, as the next delivery from Imran Tahir, and it's flicked off the toes as far as mid-wicket, and there is no run scored. He looks a sort of poor man's Abdul Qadir, really.
I was just going to say that, take the words out of my mouth there. He sort of bounds in. Very
much like Abdul Qadir. Didn't poke his tongue out there, as Qadir did. So the next delivery, it is shorter, and it's paddled, and it hits the short-leg fielder, Hashim Amla, somewhere in the lower part of the leg. He doesn't attempt to rub it, but he certainly saved at least one, possibly two, as there was a colossal gap between mid-wicket and deep backward square on this leg side, which is expansive to say the least, the area that's within the boundary on the leg side. And next delivery is back and across, and it's played out to the man at Silly Point to Tober, and there's no run scored.
I felt that Abdul Qadir's very underrated. He used to give Shane Warne lessons at some point, apparently.
He did indeed.
His formative years.
Imran Tahir bowls the next delivery. Again, it's fractionally short of a length. It's played out to the man at extra cover, and no run results. The score remains 21 for 1 after 13 overs. Barrow is 17, Compton on 3, and it is sad. I mean, you know, we've had a lot of rain, and that's putting it very mildly. We've had this appalling incident to Mark Boucher, but the moment this became a practice game per se, the cutting-edge intensity of playing a first-class game seemed to dissipate. There's always, I mean, it's something that the England players in recent years have rightly challenged. They would rather play first-class cricket and have 11 aside.
What happened with the Andrew Strauss scenario? Because I know that there was talk of getting Andrew Strauss to play to help, you know, him before the first test, and also to help, well, arguably help us. But
well, yes,
batsmen are doing pretty well at the moment. So.
Indeed, so. As to Sober again from the old pavilion end, left arm over the wicket, and that's a better length in line. It's forced Compton to play defensively off the back foot as far as extra cover, and there is no run scored. But the interesting thing is, South Africa probably feel they've been pigeonholed. They're playing 16 aside. I mean, which is ludicrous. I can understand playing 12 aside or 30, but to actually expect to play a two-day game involving 32 players is utterly ludicrous. And it's an indictment to the extent to which the administrators refused to give them sufficient time to play proper first-class cricket prior to a test series. And this was hailed as the test series of the summer, the Halcyon Zenith. So why have they not? Has it not been accorded that authority? The next delivery is played off the back foot, and Compton, with soft hands, plays it down to point, and there's no run.
And you know, it's quite ludicrous. Tests as well.
Only 3 tests, and they've been given no time in which to prepare. Why could they not have come here when the Australians did, and they could have played a series of county games whilst the one-day international series between England and Australia was being played concurrently? You know, one does wonder whether the intellectual acumen of some of the chaps in the upper echelons of the ECB, they simply don't seem to appreciate the necessity for preparation. I mean, England would rightly complain if they weren't given sufficient time to prepare, but when it's everybody else, it doesn't seem to matter very much. It's extraordinary. So his next delivery is outside the off stump, and there is no run scored.
If I could just add to that, I think that, to be honest, be controversial here, I'd actually have it that there only is one touring team. You know, I would have had West Indies or South Africa here for the whole summer. And I would have played at least 5-6 tests.
Which is what we used to do.
Five tests, which again, you know, that's
what we've always done.
Oh, you must be past a certain age. Well, it's if it ain't broke, you know, it doesn't need fixing, and things work that way, and there was a good reason because it worked, and I'm not sure it does work doing these short series.
It's the next delivery is edged by Compton, but with soft hands as far as the man at third slip. We've got a third slip in place now. 3 slips, a point, extra cover, mid-off, mid-on. Deepak Square. No, I'm inclined to agree. There was a sense in which a touring team came to this country and it monopolised and dominated the duration of the English summer. But Kumar Sangakkara was saying how ludicrous it is that some teams are demeaned to the extent that they're only allowed to play a so-called test series of 2 matches. I mean, how can you really have a series which is merely 2 matches? It's quite crazy. As the next delivery from Somerset is short and it's left alone outside the off stump.
Well, if you go back to 1976, the West Indies team had a month of preparation, 12 matches as well in terms of preparation. They had 1 match, I think, and that was a washout, and only a week or 2 before the first test, in 2012. And that I know helps the home team, and people say home advantage, but you want to see a competitive cricket too. I know that obviously we play to win, but you do want to see high class quality cricket with a competitive edge.
Oh, absolutely. As the next
You're not going to get that.
It's outside the off stump and there's no run.
You're not going to get that with teams that have no preparation in alien conditions, many of which haven't even played here. I mean, the top 4 West Indies batsmen, well, apart from Powell, haven't even played here before. You just that can't be good, really.
It also, sort of diminishes the supremacy of Test cricket insofar as sides cannot play at the highest level in a 5-day game if they've not had the sufficient time in which to prepare. And they can't be fobbed off with 2 or 3 practice matches, 2-day matches, or in the case of South Africa, they get 1 2-day game here, a 3-day game at Canterbury.
Yeah.
And that is it. And one does get the feeling that if England...
They're quite well off put next to the West Indies, then they've had a bit more.
But one gets the feeling that if England was subjected to such indignity, quite rightly, people would be up in arms. So, the ICC should ensure that these teams are given proper opportunity to acclimatise and to prepare properly. As Imran Tahir's next over is fractionally short of play, forcing shot off the back foot by Barrow.
Do you think that sorry, do you go ahead?
It's 1 run that takes the score to 22 for 1 in this the 15th over in the innings. Barrow proceeds to 18.
Do you think that might be to do with our number 1 standing in the world though at the moment, that we feel we can dictate terms in that way? Is that?
I'll come to that in just a sec, Ben. As Imran Tahir's next delivery is full in length and it's driven as far as the man at long on. An easy single result to Barrow, who now proceeds to 19. Well, that's an interesting question. But if that's the case, the ICC should legislate and put their foot down to ensure that each of the ICC test-playing nations has to conform to a certain standard, as the next delivery is played in defence beautifully, immaculately by Alex Barrow, and there is no run. Test cricket is to remain, as it always must be and should be and will be, the supreme manifestation of cricket played in the world. It needs to be treated accordingly by all countries, as the next delivery is full in length and played out to a man at Silly Point, and there's no run. I mean, when you think that, for example, that
I'm not really a fan of the rankings, I have to say.
Nor I.
Years ago, you just made your own mind up who was the best in the world, the West Indies or Australia, or whoever it was. You didn't need a chart.
But you think that some teams have done awfully well to battle against the modern thinking in these respects. As the next delivery is played in defence, it is one of the paddies a long way forward, and there is no run, and only a half appeal from Imran Tahir, and the ball goes out to Silly Point, and there is no run scored. But the ICC are responsible for the nurture and safeguarding of the game, and countries all of them should be prepared to come to heel. And how well Pakistan have done after all they've been through in recent years. So the next delivery is quicker delivery from Imran Tahir. Good ball. That was the arm ball. Went on. Barrow was up to it and played in defence as far as short extra cover, and there is no run scored.
I mean, if you watch the way England played out in the UAE, it's very hard to believe that was a team that were at number 1 or are at number 1. So, I mean, the whole issue of home advantage is an interesting one. I mean, obviously the likes of Malcolm Marshall or Glenn McGrath could come here on a cold day and still bowl brilliantly. So sometimes brilliance surpasses any conditions or home advantages or anything like that. But it does certainly, it's certainly food for thought. And I mean, don't get us wrong. We only want to see this great game improved. One doesn't want to sound like we're being negative. It's about getting it right, isn't it? Because we love this great game of ours so much. As Nwabo Sotsobe comes in to try and get a wicket, but doesn't with that first ball of his over, which is outside the off stump and left alone by Compton with his classic stance. I've always thought it reminded me a little bit of Jack Callis, the sort of way he lifts the bat slightly before, and Davy de Villiers, a kind of South African
connection.
bent
I mean,
to his
he's
style.
he's got the composure, he's got the class, and this is an important game for Compton, because if he could make a not out 45 or 50 odd, he must surely be in the reckoning, not for a one-day international place, but for a place in the test side.
As he waits again for the Nwabo Sotsobe, who bowls, and that's outside the off stump and left alone, went back to shape to play but decided not to, and there's no run. We've got three slips, I think that is, or is that 2 slips and a gully? I think that's 3 slips.
What a wonderful name that is, Sotsobe.
It is.
You can almost imagine Sotsobe running in with Ketchaway at Rorke's Drift on the 23rd of January 1879, with the Zulu armies permeating the defences of the 23rd Regiment of Foot South Wales Borderers. It's a wonderful sort of Zulu-type name, isn't it?
It is. As he comes in again now, just running in about 79, 80 miles an hour, not bowling too quickly, and that's played down towards mid-wicket by short mid-wicket by Compton for no run off the back foot. We've got quite a short mid-wicket, a deep square leg. We've got 2 slips and a gully. We've got a point. We've got a cover fielder, mid-off, mid-on. Fairly conventional field. And a sort of deep mid-wicket there, comes sweeper as well on the boundary, almost a one-day type position over there, I see, as Nwabo Sotsobe comes in again and reaches the umpire and bowls, and that's played forward, sort of skewed from the outside edge of the bat down towards the chap in the gully who picks that up, and there's no run. That chap being Duminy, I believe. No. Yes.
Didn't Jacques Callis play absolutely superbly yesterday? He was
well, I wasn't here, unfortunately, so I
reeking of class.
I was so looking forward to watching him this morning, and he didn't come out the bat, maybe because he had a sleepless night with Boucher.
But Hamish Amler bowled Hashim Amler. Well, see, I live in Alma Street in Taunton, who've got Alma and Amler to contend with, but he batted beautifully too.
That's again outside the off stump, left alone, and there's no run.
And in actual fact, he reminds me, and it's not merely because of the beard, he's very similar in the way he stands at the wicket to Mohammed Yusuf. That sort of silky oriental class, that sort of world class.
He is. It's interesting because he got a lot of stick when he first, I remember, I think it was...
Well, he had a bad time. He failed abysmally, didn't he, at the start of his test career.
There was all this talk about the quota system and things. I remember hearing something on one of the commercial sports stations all about it, and they were saying he shouldn't be in the side, and it's ridiculous, because he's obviously shown what a class player he is. He's one of the top players in the world at the moment, and he is very Mohammed Yusuf-like, as Sotsobe bowls again, and that's a slightly quicker one, but it's played nicely forward, and there's no run, nice conventional forward defensive, and he's really proved his worth in the side, and that's great to see for South African cricket, which is in a great place at the moment. And I think really, just to reiterate what we were saying earlier on, I think that the point is what you want to see is a pool of teams that are all strong and competing. You don't want to see a kind of two-tier or unofficial two-tier kind of scenario, which could develop where Pakistan, West Indies are kind of around the middling of that tier, but you've got your Zimbabwe and your Bangladesh at the bottom, and your Australia and your Antipodean teams at the top, the South Africans and England and everything else. You don't really want to see that. You want to see a tussle between the teams and them all to be of a high level. Invest in those countries, I'd say, as that's played off the stumps. And there's a quick single attempted and the possibility of a run-out, but thankfully not, as Compton goes back, a kind of yes-no scenario. It was dabbed out into the offside, and the cover fielder ran across, but there was no single there at any point. Thankfully, sanity prevailed, and there was no run-out, as that's a quicker one, again, played out in the offside, past that cover fielder for a quick single by Barrow, and that brings Compton to face the music, who just does a bit of gardening and gets his popping crease ready as the ball is in the hands of the fielder at cover, who throws it across to Imran Tahir, who gets ready again, just flicking the ball from palm to palm in that style of his, kind of bounding in a slight Kadir-esque manner. Again, a quicker one, an attempted sweep, which inside edges onto the pad, balloons up, but nobody can get to it far too quickly for anyone to get to that, really. It bobbled up for a second. Imran gives the batsman a quick stare there of irony, as umpire Wharf just holds his left hand out to wait, and to hear bowls, and that's on the off stump, play forward correctly and nicely by Compton, and there's no run as it gets darker here, quite visibly.
Well, yes, it is a little, but the crowds are not as menacing as they have been at various points during the game. Do you know, from the Somerset perspective, Ben, it's interesting to see how the Overtons have acquitted themselves superbly again, and Mr. Regan behind the stumps.
Jack Regan, as that's played up back towards... so I couldn't resist it. I know it's one of your favourite shows of the 1970s. Do excuse me there. So that's played back to him onto here, and there's no run. And once again, he spins it from hand to hand. Like it isn't in Abdul's class, but...
he looks like it, doesn't he? Look like it? Yeah, he really does.
You'd think he was impersonating him, doing impressions out there. It really is uncanny. Anyway, there's no run to that one. Once again, played forward by Compton. And that's the end of the over.
Yes, the Welsh were in mirthful mood. Again, the naughty thought has occurred to me that I wonder if our Mr. Umpire, Mr. Wharf, has ever been to Canary Wharf. I suspect possibly
well,
not.
If he was umpiring Cattanach Canary, it could get really difficult there.
Yes.
But no, Canary Wharf even.
Canary Wharf. Now, do you know, the umpires are actually having a chat about the light, which is
disappointing.
Well, really, it's almost anemically negative. I mean, they don't have fuss these days. 5 raindrops and they're off like frightened ferrets. You know, it's something that never happened years ago, Ben.
Well, it's funny. We were having a little bit of byplay earlier on with a chap we were talking to earlier that used to bowl for Somerset a few years ago.
Stefan Jones.
Rugby, yeah.
Stefan Jones, yep. Lovely fellow.
He actually laughed. Oh, it wasn't like that in our day. He was saying under his breath. And one does it sound like a bit of an old record when one says these things, but it really isn't a case of, in our day, it's just about giving the public value for money, you know, and making sure that cricket goes on.
I don't think people are going to be, fobbed off, are they, really, with no play when it's not raining, and we've got 2 spinners on. We've got Alvaro Peterson coming on now.
Yeah. That's a good captaincy, because that's positive. You know, that's saying, let's keep us out here, and that's good to see. Mind you, it does serve South Africa, doesn't it? But it's good to see for the crowd as Peterson comes in.
Oh, hello!
There's a looping full toss which is spanked away for 4 runs. As you can hear by the trickle of applause in the background, that was a lovely stroke, hit away on the leg side. Spanked away, really. It was a juicy full toss.
Well, it was help yourself bowling.
That was the
sort of thing you face on a Sunday in a village game.
Yes. As he comes in again. Left arm spin and bowls, and that's down the leg side, and he goes to flick that away, but doesn't make contact, and it's fielded by A.B. de Villiers. We've got a Hashim Amla there at a sort of silly mid-off position, just the one slip, which is Callis. We've got Peterson coming in again now, and he bowls, and that's played away on the onside for a quick first single. He wants to come back for a second, which he is, and they do it successfully. Well run, actually, and takes the score up to 30 for 1. 17.3 overs gone, and so he waits again, Barrow, as it gets even darker now. I must admit, it is getting gloomy. You feel the rain is on the way. Hope not, as that's another full toss, which is driven away for a quick single down to the chap on the boundary there, who comes across and fields. That is Dale Steyn, I believe, or is that? Yes, that is Dale Steyn.
What do you think, Ben?
Fields it quite nicely. We've got Graham Smith just below us here at mid-off.
I was just going to mention Graham, so I'll come back to that in a second. There's something I want to ask you.
Yes, as Compton waits, and that's played away again on the onside for a quick single, deep far away.
I mean, he won't be eminently satisfied with being out so cheaply for 10 and knowing that he's only got 1 game in which to prepare for the Test match. And we were lucky. It was a wicket that was deserved in a sense, but he'll be dissatisfied at having only batted for a very brief period, won't he?
It's down the leg side and dabbed away for a quick single to fine leg, and actually jogs that really quite leisurely. Proceedings quite casual at the moment, quite nice atmosphere, good spirit between these 2 teams, in really nice byplay between them both. It's been a pleasure to watch from that point of view as we look out onto the offside here and see a lone figure of Lunwaba Sotsobe out here on this long boundary underneath the Pegasus Apartments. But one should imagine many a batsman would eye that Colin Atkinson pavilion up with some glee. Imagine Liv Richards batting on that wicket. He'd have loved to have spanked it up there into the members, get a bit of their attention. As Tahir, not Abdul Qadir, but Imran Tahir bowls, and that's outside the off stump, and he cuts it away down to the boundary for a single.
Yes, what do you think of Graeme Smith? I mean, there is talk of his calling it a day regarding the captaincy, and he's still very young. He's only in his early 30s. He became captain when he was very, very young, at 22.
Incredible, really. Imran Tahir again, and that's flighted, but played nicely forward, and there's no run there. Nice bat and pad closely together, and Compton having no hesitation but to play that entirely correctly, and there's no run.
Do you think he'll pass on the baton at the end of the series, regardless of the result, Ben?
Tahir again, and that's a curious stroke. Comes down the wicket as if he'd like to hit him straight down the ground, but doesn't. Ends up doing exactly the same. Bat and pad close together, smothers the spin, and there's no run. I'd be surprised if he did. I can't see what other candidates there are. De Villiers, perhaps. No, he's too young to give it up, and that's a quicker one down the leg side, and he flicks that away for a quick single. Jogged quite nicely actually in the end, and there's just a single played nicely away. No, I'd be surprised. He's still got that sort of statesman-like persona. He looks like a captain. You feel he should be there. I can't imagine him not being captain and being in the team, as that's left alone by Barrow for no run outside the off stump.
It's also, I imagine, a fairly red-hot prop forward.
Yeah, well, I don't really know my rugby. I don't mind a bit of tennis, but cricket's my number one, really, as Tahir bowls again. And, that's a bit close to the off stump. That's left alone by Barrow, but Imran Tahir's hands hit his head as he felt that as that was left alone by the batsman, it might have just shaved that off stump. There's been a couple of bowls today. We had Amla was clean bowl.
Almost consigned to the outfield.
Surprising, yes, as that's bowled again on the leg stump, played out on driven again down to mid-on for a quick single, and they take that run. But yes, it's an unusual stroke, kind of rush of blood there from Compton, just wanting to mix things up and get some excitement into play, perhaps. It was a nice off drive, but for a second one thought that Smith might take the catch, as he again drives it, but straight back to the bowler. And it was lofted, and just for a second Smith was sort of looking up as if to say, I can catch that over my shoulder. It might just fall. I might just be able to get to it. But it's like he sort of stopped himself for fear of perhaps injuring himself, as that's played back really nicely and compactly by Compton for no run. Fielded off his own bowling by Peterson. But yeah, just for a chance you thought there might be a catch there. But as I say, he could have perhaps gone for a dive, but it's one of those shallow or shanto where perhaps he thought, no, not in this scenario. It's not even a first-class fixture, so I'm not going to rupture myself going for a stupendous Bresnan-style catch.
Do you know, I was going to say, Ben, you're making reference to the fact, again, that it's not a first-class game. Given there are 16 players in the side, each side, I suppose it's theoretically possible for a bowler to take 15 wickets in innings. And let's also remember the fact that in the 19th century, W.G. Grace and the All England players, as the next delivery from Imran Tahir is full in length, it's driven out to mid-off quite authoritatively by
nice shot.
Alex Barrow, but there's no run scored. In the 18th and 19th centuries, the All England clubs and William Clark, the one-eyed Nottinghamshire bricklayer, who became a remarkable figure in his day, is the next to be short, and that's poor, and it's pulled, but it's pulled backward as square, off not off the middle of the bat. No. It's only a single is picked up. Yeah, he actually gone.
Looked to hit that for 6, really.
It went down to
delivery.
To Sober at long leg, who picks up, and only a single result. But games against sides of 15, 20 and 25 were not uncommon 150 years ago, as the next delivery is played off the back foot by Compton and his far as point, and there is no run. Morley Morkel, the fielder. So you'd find top-class teams, the All England 11, and some of the county teams, such as they were in the days preceding 1863, would play teams at 25 and 30 as he shimmies down the track. What's interesting is it comes to
throw the stumps down there, Imran Tahir.
Yeah, shimmies down the track, and Imran feigns a throw at the stumps upon collecting the delivery that struck back to him. Shows a bit of purposeful aggression as he comes again bounding into Compton. It's full in length, and he allows it to turn as it does. Effectively a leg break, it's released, it's let alone outside the off stump, and there is no run. So, it's not uncommon in years gone by, obviously 150 years ago or more, when top teams would play local 15s, 20s and 25s as the next delivery is swept well, and it's swept for 4.
Yeah, that's quite a safe part of the ground. There's not a fielder there apart from Sotsobi.
That was middled imperiously, and it went square, 90 degrees square, absolutely spot on, a lovely stroke. That was Barrow, in actual fact, who struck that, and he's looking more authoritative than at any stage I've ever seen him in his career. He's now proceeded to 30. The score is 46 for 1. And I suppose, in a way, Somerset have actually acquitted themselves exceedingly well with genuine authority in many departments of the game during this game. But I don't know, the weather and the fact that it's only 2 days, and of course the Mark Boucher incident has kind of caused everything to sort of dissipate, isn't it, really?
Well, for me, that will always, pardon the pun, sort of be a dark cloud over the game. I mean, it's one of the saddest things I've ever witnessed, really. It's just truly tragic, really tragic.
As Peterson's next delivery this time, left arm around the wicket from the Old Pavilion end is played watchfully forward in defence by Barrow.
Exactly 999 dismissals, apparently, catches, I think it was.
No, is that international cricket all told?
I think so. Yep. I'm not sure. I'll have to double check.
So Peterson's next delivery is full in length. It's driven compactly and competently to Graham Smith in a deepish mid-off position. We have a deepish mid-on. I can't call it long on and long off. No. Have an extra cover. We have a point. Shortish mid-wicket, long leg, square leg, deep mid-wicket. As the next delivery is fractionally quick, and it's late cut beautifully, deftly and delicately by Nick Compton, who comes back for a second run and actually executes it with ease, and that was a beautiful shot.
That was a classy stroke, really classy.
I can always remember dear old Jim Laker used to say it's gone out of the game, but to my knowledge, I think the late cut's being played more and more than it ever has been previously, it seems.
Yes, yeah. Well, that might be because of 2020, you never know.
It could be. It's Peterson's next delivery flighted, and that's bowled, and it hits him on the pad. No. There's a protracted appeal, not a particularly convincing or authoritative protracted appeal. From
almost play acting, really.
From Peterson, who.
But you feel the 2020 does breed some rather bad shots for the game in some respects. But it does breed a rather good shot, because it's nice to see that back again, the late cut.
Indeed, so. As the next delivery from Peterson is driven, and Compton takes a single.
That's the 50 up, I think.
That is the 50 up, and so it's 50 for 1 in this, the 22nd over, so it's an exceedingly slow scoring rate. So clearly Somerset, inevitably, are treating this as a sort of glorified net session, as indeed they ought, in a sense, as the next delivery to Barrow is again full in length off middle and off stump. Barrow is watchfully forward. The ball is played back to the bowler, and there is no run scored. So the game, in actual fact, I think they're shaking hands. In fact, they are. They are shaking hands. The bails have been removed, and the stumps have been removed from the ground. I think there was an air of futility about the whole thing, and but it's a shame that so many things have interfered with a game that was high on the agenda for local people to come and watch. And the weather could have been an awful lot worse, but it could also have been an awful lot better. And Hashim Amla now seeks to embrace Nigel Cowley, who's actually a lovely fellow, a former Hampshire cricketer, of course, very fine player.
Looks like they're just getting things ready for us.
They're off to Kent. They're off to Canterbury tonight.
Yeah.
And I think, in all fairness, from the South African perspective, Ben, they'll be keen to get out of this place and get away.
It's been a sad episode for them, for personal reasons. But Mark Boucher, a wonderful performer, can look back proudly on a magnificent career. And a bittersweet end, and let's hope his sight isn't as badly affected as the reports are coming out saying that it may be. But yes, it will hang over this fixture, over the whole tour. What should have been an enjoyable couple of days of almost exhibition type cricket has been soured. But we saw some lovely batting yesterday from Callis, and today we saw some good bowling and batting. It's been an interesting day, but it's been obviously painfully affected by the tragic events, and the press conference at 1 o'clock obviously reflected that, and that's really hung over the game. You can almost feel an atmosphere, really, but there's been some entertaining stuff, but as I say, there's been this underlining atmosphere as well, which is understandable, really.
And yet the irony is, of course, as is often the way on these occasions, the weather now seems to have become perkier, and the sky to the west is suddenly brighter. But I think, the game wasn't without significance significance for both teams. I mean, South Africa at least had a taste of the cold and the wet, which I'm sure they loved like a sore head. Well, but, the Somerset players have had a chance. I mean, Barrow, I think, has had a chance at least to get some runs under his belt, even if it's only 31 not out. He's been there for the duration of the innings. That's 22 overs, 50 for 1 at the close of play on this, the second and final day's play of this tourist game. Somerset 312 for 8 declared. South Africa 282 for 8 or 9 declared, I think perhaps it was. So Somerset won't be displeased with their performance. There's a sense in which clearly Arrow Sapphire will look back and think, gosh, well, the run out in the first innings may have psychologically precipitated a sort of negative mindset when he came out to bat in the second. And no one's lost out badly from either side. I mean, and yet South Africa would also argue, I suspect, that no one has gained anything of any great significance. I mean, Graham Smith has failed. I mean, they needed this hole in the head. They could easily sit and mope about. They could. I mean, Smith has
didn't need that.
Failed with the bat, and Staines bowled well, Morkel's bowled well, Tahir's bowled well, Philander bowled certainly the pick of the bowlers for the most part. Vernon Philander. Rudolph had a chance to make a few. Graham Smith didn't. Amler batted beautifully. Callis was the finest batsman on either side, as one would suspect. Tavilliers, the most conspicuous failure with the bat here. JP Duminy had a chance to score a few, but it's just not sufficient time to prepare for a Test series, is it?
No, not at all. I mean, Amler's 64 was a high point as well for them, and there was a nice little flurry of late order runs as well from Peterson and Morkel. Morne Morkel hit some lusty blows that were quite fun to watch. But yes, it's not a lot. I mean, Meshter played well for that 50. A couple of Centurions as well for Somerset. So Somerset got a bit from the game. But yes, obviously scored more runs as well than South Africa. But
Jack Leach did jolly well, didn't he?
Yes. And in the end, Steyn, was it 5 overs, 1 maiden, 0 for 12. Philander, 5 overs, 3 maidens, 1 for 6. Imran Tahir, 6 overs, 1 maiden, 0 for 11. And Sobi, 3 overs, 2 maidens, 0 for 2. Peterson, 3 overs for 19 runs. Compton not out 18, Barrow not out 31. And Sapphire, unfortunately, got they want to leave this match behind. He got ducks in each innings. But yes, it's as I say, it really wouldn't matter if there'd been a century in each innings by 2 of the South Africans or something. It would have all been ruined, I think, by what's happened. So that's just the nature of the beast. It's horrible luck. But it's been a useful turnout for them in some respects. Other than that, but it's a difficult thing to leave behind, something like this for them. It's a big tragedy, a huge blow about ahead of the Test series. But as I say, that not enough preparation. No, I agree. But better than some have had this summer. So,
well, yes, indeed. One wonders. I mean, clearly they'll attempt, weather permitting, of course, to up their levels of intensity in their 3-day game against Kent, which is not entirely insignificant regarding 1 or 2 of the Kent players. I mean, I know it seems a sort of long shot, to say the least, but there are going to be those such as Robert Key and even dear old Geraint, bless him, who will want to attempt to prove that they are still, albeit outside candidates for some form of international recall at some stage or other. And Kent are a good side. Stevens is a very fine cricketer, underrated cricketer, bats beautifully in the middle order as well. And this young fast bowler whose name has momentarily escaped my mind, Cook, is it? Cook?
Yes, I think so.
Who I think will certainly be keen to have a crack at the South Africans. But there will be those who, when this summer is concluded, and let's hope we do have some proper summer in the next 7 or 8 weeks or so, clearly there will be a sort of debrief amongst the ECB and the counties, and even to an extent the ICC. What chances are there of there being a level playing field for Test nations, to the extent that if they could conceive of a mandatory regulation which says that all Test series between all Test members must be a minimum of 4 Test matches, whether it's Bangladesh, Zimbabwe, England, Australia, South Africa, whatever it is, we never go fewer than 4.
Well, I think that's going to be a bit. Well, it's funny you should say Zimbabwe, Bangladesh. See, that could easily be an absolute disaster because it's something of a mismatch. It's a difficult one. I can understand shorter series against the very much weaker oppositions. But like you say, if it's that makes it one more for one and different for another. So I don't know. It's a difficult nut to crack. I mean, certainly with the Test Championship idea that's been mooted, unfortunately, I think that's been being held off till 2017 due to the television people, which is a bit of a disaster. It's a great idea. There are different innovations that could be introduced. We'll just have to see. I mean, it's an interesting time in cricket history. Certainly you feel we're at a sort of crossroads, and it's a very interesting period, really, because it'd be interesting to see how the 2020 pans out in the next few years. Even if IPL had all the rain we've had, I don't know if IPL would be a success.
There was rain in the IPL, quite significant rain from time to time, but you see I think Test cricket needs to be carefully nurtured. It needs to be carefully evaluated and treasured and revered. And I can almost, in my mind's eye, hear Sir Geoffrey saying, well, look, you've got teams like Zimbabwe and Bangladesh, who are actually, incidentally, vastly improved, Zimbabwe particularly, but if they are sufficiently weak that the ICC are only prepared to allow them to play 2 Test match series, then there are those who would argue that they ought not, at this stage, I know Zimbabwe obviously has huge problems politically, but they ought not to be Test playing nations at all. Now, I think they ought. I'm delighted to see them win a couple of one-day internationals, and of course we all know that had the Mugabe situation never become an issue in the 80s and 90s, Zimbabwe would have been one of the finest Test nations in the world in the modern day. Potentially. Yeah. They've had some. My chair collapses underneath me. How extraordinary! I've suddenly plummeted the depths here in the commentary box. My chair.
Gone down in
it's one of those fold-up chairs, and it's suddenly decided to cascade in a vertical downward direction. Whether there's someone
crawled from under you there, that was
someone saying something.
Comedy moment. It's quite extraordinary. It's a good job there aren't any cameras in here. I tell you that. But it's Ronnie's moment there.
But I can still see above the level of the horizontal tabletop. Only just actually, ironically, we to the south, northwest of us here, the Quantocks almost look as if the sun is genuinely shining. As our poor ground staff here are bowed in sort of workaholic mode. They are slaves to the nth degree as they sweep the dust. I'm amazed there's any dust left to sweep. I thought it was all going to be coagulated mud, such as the sort that we've seen in Ottery St Mary recently, but no.
And we've got these of Coleridge.
Indeed, sir. And we've got these rather incongruous security guards looking formidably sort of bouncer-like with their bald heads and their legs stretched out. And it's one of those silly situations where there are more security guards in a ring of steel than there are spectators to oversee, unless, of course, they're anticipating a serious assault from the Seagulls, who suddenly appeared in strength to the west of the ground.
Either that or a ground invasion by those Seagulls.
It's quite interesting. I'm sure dear old Blower is going to have a field day.
I don't think I've ever seen this before. As we look out over the ground, we've literally got 3 on the offside. We've got 3 security men, all in green. And on the leg side, another 3, and in front of the Colin Atkinson Pavilion, another one. Yet there are hardly any spectators left. It's quite extraordinary.
And the money it must cost to employ these chaps is quite extraordinary. At a time of financial stringency.
Maybe they're worried about the side over there at the. There's a special.
Well, I think it could be
quite a few.
The invasion, the geriatric invasion with the firecrackers and the need for it's not Lahore or Rawalpindi or Multan with the fires in the stands. But anyway, the fact is, I'm sorry to have to report that the game has petered out in really a rather sort of, it could hardly be more sort of anticlimactic in many ways. But the fact remains that the game has given the South Africans a modicum of practice. It's acclimatised those that haven't been to this country before, and many have, of course, particularly Graham Smith, de Villiers, Peterson, Tahir, obviously Callis. A lot of them have played over here. Rudolph, of course, for Yorkshire. But it's given them a chance to gel, but they are going to have to pull themselves together. And I think, as Ben made the point very validly earlier on, I think the whole issue regarding Mark Boucher might actually cause them to say, look, the greatest wicketkeeper statistically, and statistics do count for a great deal, he is holds more Test victims than any other wicketkeeper in the history of the game since the inception of Test cricket in March 1877. And whilst this was always going to have been, allegedly, his swan song tour, I'm not sure it would have been. I think he may well have chosen ultimately to carry on.
He was thinking going to Australia, wasn't he?
He was. But this is, it's one of those awful scenarios where one looks back in a week's time and thinks it's almost unreal. it's either going to knock the stuffing out of them or it's going to inspire that boer spirit.
Yeah, because we had 2 years ago with the Pakistan, we seem to have some unusual things happen at Taunton because we had the whole Pakistan team issue with the spot fixing a couple of years ago. We had all the Sky News people everywhere. It was extraordinary. But, yeah, no, like you say, I mean, the Kent game's coming up on Friday. Quite why they had to leave this game so early, I don't know, because it's not till Friday. But Simon Cook, as you say, he's 35 now, I think he is. I think it must be the bowler you were mentioning. He'll look to get something out of that.
There's a young 19-year-old, is it not? I mean, perhaps
no,
is it Bell or Ball or someone? Is it Bell? Ball? Is it Ball?
I'll look at. I'll have a research on that one. But
thank you, Ben. But it's.
But no, the scores in the end, just to reiterate for any listeners, 312 for 8 Somerset were in their first innings, 282 for 9 declared South Africans, of course, with the Boucher injury, and in the end 50 for 1, and that was with this match as officially declared a draw just about 15-20 minutes ago now.
Yeah, so there's little else in a way to add. Safe to say that the county championship, thankfully, I think for most of us, will resume, and we have a fixture here on June the 18th.
Not far off now.
Indeed, so that'll be something, and it gives the Somerset team a chance to regroup and given that their position is third in the table, and rumour has it there's a certain left-handed batsman of some repute who is going to make a comeback in the Bridgewater direction at some point in the next week or two, a chap called Marcus Trescothick. Yeah. And I'm also informed entirely unofficially that he is hoping to, in the event of Somerset winning the quarter-final here, we've got quarter-final as a home draw on the 24th or 25th of June.
Adam Ball, by the way.
Adam Ball, yes, thank you for that. He's hoping to be fit for the finals day, obviously on the assumption that Somerset make it, which I'm sure they will, and hope indeed that they do. But I think from the Somerset perspective, Ben, would you not agree that looking at the season thus far as a whole, it has been a season of astonishing success, given that Marcus Trescothick has been an absentee almost throughout the entire season to date?
Well, it has, absolutely. I mean, Somerset pretty much, nailed to the mast in terms of the two most important issues for them are the 2020 competition and obviously the county championship, not degrading the 40 over, but that seems to have fallen into the background. Those two seem to be the main. And a number of team members have had to change their abilities to a certain extent even and reprioritise and reapproach their game even. It's been incredible. I mean, Jamal Hussain has hardly, had a run in the side since he's been signed, really, and we've had a situation where Peter Trigo has really stood up to the plate and wholeheartedly taken the opportunity with both hands and been put in unaccustomed positions. And in a way, as you say, Somerset have done outstandingly well, and Bridgewater are going to be hosting Trescothick potentially in the next week or two. So I was worried it was going to be career-ending, so it'd be lovely to see Marcus back at
wonderful.
But just quickly mentioning the Kent bowler you were mentioning earlier, it was actually Adam Ball. Just to follow up with that, and yes, he is a very exciting youngster. But I think he's England under-19s cricketer, so yeah, he'll be looking to make an impact with that game coming up against the South Africans. But yeah, I think Trescothick. We all have our fingers crossed that there's hopefully a good few, a couple of years at least left in him. But who knows with these sorts of injuries, But we'll see how he comes out of that Bridgewater fixture,
Well, you've got to, yes. I mean, he obviously from the batting perspective, and if one can refer, loosely speaking, to Peter Trigo as being the new Ian Blackwell. I mean, if one had to pick a player this year who has utterly led from the front in every department, he's batted magnificently, he's bowled superbly. He is, and I know it's a slightly ephemeral phrase these days, this business of being a team player, but he is in every respect, and he's a super chap, and despite the violent colour of his orangey training shoes, which I think are lovely, actually, I'm only pulling your leg, but Peter, if you're listening, but he's had a superb season, and I'm so pleased, actually, that it seemed to take us an awful long time to say, 2 or 3 games ago, look, you better take a bit of a break, old chap. You've been on the go since March. He scored a wonderful 99 here at a practice game.
Yeah, well, we were commentating, and I remember he hit a 6 straight over this commentary box.
Not the first time he's attempted to assault the commentators in the box here.
Yeah.
So one has to take an optimistic realistic point of view, I think, Ben. I mean, the summer is only halfway through. Somerset could win the championship, could yet still pull off the 2020. Sadly, that may not be the case with the CB40, but great that Marcus Trescothick is back, and but it's sad to reflect on this, and I think it's worth saying that we from the bottom of our hearts we really do wish South Africa all the very best for this summer series. This is meant to be a battle of the Titans.
Indeed.
It still will be, and I think the weather has got to be. We need a change in the climatic conditions as a matter of urgency. But the South Africans are keen to get away now. They're keen to leave the ground. We have. It's come to the stage now where I think we need to call it a day and to return to this great ground, this historic ground. On July the 18th for the County Championship commentary. That'll be the next scheduled piece of commentary.
I look forward to that as well, and that should be an exciting fixture. Let's hope the weather holds.
I hope so, Ben.
It's not looking too good long term, but it was supposed to be worse today, so who knows?
I quite agree. Well, Ben, thank you very much indeed. Ben Manning for joining us. Julian Cattanach in the commentary box. We're wishing you a lovely evening. Let's hope a rain-free evening. Let's hope we have some summer. Let's hope that South Africans have some success against Kent.
Yes,
and a game that has petered out to a draw, but I think all can hold their heads high. There is a melancholic atmosphere in the ground.
A lot of pressmen around.
A lot of pressmen around, but we would wish everybody in this great game, particularly those of you of a South African disposition, all the very best for the summer to come. But it's time to sign off here at the County Ground in Taunton.
Indeed.
We shall be back with you come July the 18th for the resumption of the County Championship match.
Look forward to it, yes.
And we look forward very much to the pleasure of your company, wherever you may be listening throughout the world. And we hope that you have a safe journey home and that you enjoy any cricket that comes to the fore in the next week or two prior to the Championship.